Yo, what's going on, everybody? And welcome back to Let's Talk Comics, where I overanalyze panels so you don't have to. And while I might not usually and often really just discuss and go straight into actual comics, even though my channel is just Let's Talk Comics, I really wanted to just dive into and discuss one of my favorite newer comics that have come out in the last year, which is specifically just the entirety of the overarching absolute universe that has been coming out by Scott Snyder and Nick Dragotta. And I one really like this because I've always liked the Elseworlds storylines where we see our favorite heroes, villains, or whatever in these different kind of unique situations with different stories and everything that could possibly be changed having been changed. And Absolute Batman is just one of those things that really just changes the character of Batman in such a new way that I really just enjoyed seeing in general. Like, this is one of the most bold and radical reinventions of the Dark Knight that I think I've ever seen, albeit a couple other things that you could possibly throw in there. Because this isn't just your typical repackaging of the classic Batman arc. Absolute Batman's part of, the DC's Absolute line, which they've been publishing with the intention to, show these characters reimagined, missing specific aspects of themselves and changing specific things using I think it's a bit of Dark Side's influence or something like that. And just kind of creating an Elseworlds with this kind of very different look in terms of how we normally see the average Earth Prime DC universe. And trust me, this story doesn't just dip its toes into the dark, it cannonballs into it and changes the Dark Knight in ways that I don't think I've ever actively seen. So, just to kind of get you guys to understand exactly what the big things and differences are, we start off with the biggest change. Bruce Wayne, our classic normal Batman that we've all come to know and love and always just argue whether he beats a character using prep time or not, is very much changed in this because he is not that billionaire that we have come to know. He is a civil engineer raised by very, very, different kind of parents. Obviously, without him being a billionaire, Wayne Enterprises does not exist. So, his mother this time around and his father are very different people. His father was a school teacher, and his mother was a social worker. They want, obviously, as Kim keeps saying, not being billionaires, don't grow up in that same wealthy mansion that we know Bruce Wayne to come out of, and that entire big Wayne Manor that doesn't exist here. He grows up in the heart of Crime Alley, and not even specifically Crime Alley, but he grows up more in the regular parts of Gotham. Gone are the pearls and the Wayne fortune and the stately mansion. In their place, Bruges is forged by an actual normality of not quite poverty, but systematic violence, a broken city, and more normal stuff that we can relate to comparatively to this billionaire mansion that we can't really fantasize and put our heads into living inside of. His origin also does get a dramatic overhaul too. Bruce's father is murdered during a school trip to the Gotham Zoo, and that tragically is the moment that really just kind of, that moment of randomlessness, that randomness and public horror is the thing that really lights the fire. Instead of being trained by masters across the globe, Bruce learns everything that he needs to know from blue collar work, old engineering books. He's had a hard knock around the entirety of Gotham's underworld due to the fact of his friends, specifically, are a lot different from what we know in the classic origins. And kind of just backtracking to the entire incident with his father, the reason why he still ends up becoming Batman is because while his father was actively dying, he is caught up in a bat enclosure, and all of the bats end up just swarming him, getting to the point that his mom, or when somebody eventually finds him, it is an entire situation of him just being covered in bats and nobody knowing that he's there until he lets out a scream of people finally being able to tell there's Bruce Wayne. This is such a very just interesting kind of deviation from the normal theater to Crime Alley to his parents both like biting the bullet, just due to the fact of one, only one of his parents dies this time around. Only his father dies, meaning Martha, his mother, stays alive all the way up until the point that he is now Batman. She is alive, and Bruce actively still has a parent still guiding him, still actively being able to be there with him. This isn't that he is a complete orphan. He just has lost a singular parent. And as I already said, Bruce learned everything from blue collar work. He is an active, civil engineer. He completely works around the city just to kind of rebuild it by hand. And while I'm going to have to say that he didn't get there easily, he obviously did go off the little bad track at some point, specifically with his own time. He started off, rebelling after the fact of his father dying, and eventually he got back on the correct footing and started, doing the things that actively mattered, trying to help around, graduating, becoming a civil engineer, working around all of Gotham to try making it better from the inside, and actively just doing everything that he can to help the city that he does truly love. He still ends up really dealing with and still ends up becoming the Bat from scratch, literally, building everything himself. This Batman is less of a symbol of fear and more raw nerve. A self-made man with a vendetta. His mission feels more desperate and a lot more personal. And honestly, it makes him so much more scary. And in this, there is another, kind of big change with this entire specific universe. I'm not trying to go into the specific big details because I would honestly like you guys to read this entire run by yourselves and get the nitty gritty of all the information just by reading it and kind of witnessing it firsthand. But I have no problem, giving you the basic rundown of what's different and just kind of giving you a lot of the basic information without spoiling every singular integral detail and breaking it down scene by scene or issue by issue, which I really would be happy to do if you guys do want that, and you guys can put that down in the comments. But one of the other big changes, as I was saying, is his friend group. We know Bruce usually doesn't have a lot of friends growing up, but the big difference this time around is after his father's death, he does actively have a good couple friends that he was grown up and raised around. And the friends this time around are his literal rogue gallery from the main universe. From Oz, Cobblepot, the Penguin, the Riddler, Crocodile, Two-Face, Selina Kyle, like all of these people that we know as his normal rogues gallery in our base universe that we've seen him fight countless times are his childhood friends. Selina Kyle being, obviously a love interest because we all love Selina and Bruce. Harvey Dent being a close friend, Oz being a close friend, Enigma being a close friend, all of these like normal villains that we've kind of known to fight against him at multiple times are some of his closest friends, and we see their relationships throughout the entirety of all of these issues. In quite literally the first like 2 issues, we literally just see how they actively still hang out with each other. Selina's off doing her own thing in different places, and the rest of the guys in the group still meet up very often and just, play cards and just talk with each other, still being extremely close friends. So this really would make you automatically imagine like the big rogues, the big villains that we know him to be fighting, besides like obviously the Joker and all of that, are actively his friends. So wouldn't that mean Gotham kind of has to be better? Because if you're missing the Riddler, the Penguin, like Crocodile, Two-Face, and like these specific big bads, you would automatically imagine that Gotham probably has to be a little safer due to these 4 big villains not being there, and there's not going to be as many villains around in Gotham in general. But that actively would be the wrong idea. Because Gotham in this timeline, honestly, might even be worse than what we normally see it as. Because chaos does reign in this version of Gotham, with a crew of criminals kind of taking complete control of Gotham. This group being called the Party Animals. Because the city is basically tearing itself apart due to this gang of anarchist freaks that call themselves the Party Animals. Their gang is... They're less of a gang and more of a movement, if we're being specific. A group of chaos junkies hell-bent on collapsing every institution that keeps the city standing. They're led by a totally unhinged version of Roman Sionis, aka the Black Mask, who's reimagined as a far different version of the Black Mask than we're used to. Sionis' new look looks chilling. He wears a bone like white skull mask and commands loyalty like a cult leader. He treats murder like a performance art, and his crew is less interested in profit and more obsessed with that disturбation and like that disruption of everything else. They're terrifying because they don't just have a plan, they have just an appetite for destruction. We quite literally see in one of the first issues him going off and like talking to Falcone and Maroni, to the two big crime bosses that we usually hear of in Gotham, and eventually while they're just having a conversation, and obviously it's just the Falcone and Maroni just trying to kick Roman out of the entirety of Gotham, we see him light up the back of them, and it is just masks of all of the faces of both of their higher up generals and all of their like subordinates, and it leads to the point where he just gets rid of both of these crime bosses just so he can completely make sure that the city is under his control. All of the headaches that those two would cause, he doesn't want to deal with them, and he just gets them gone, which just kind of shows you, one, what type of timing his character is on and the kind of character that he's truly about to be. This really just does kind of set the atmosphere for the entirety of this entire run, first of all, and it only gets more tone shifting and more actively fully invested and embelled in time in the kind of real big series that this is about to be once the Batman arrives. Once Bruce Wayne dons the mask and we see what kind of Batman he is. And if you guys have probably been seeing on your screen anyways, you can see he looks quite a bit different from our normal Batman. He is built different. He is quite literally built like a brick. This Bruce Wayne is built so much bulkier than we've normally ever seen him. Whatever, 6'6", something, built like 240, 260 pounds, like fully built out of muscle. And we can see he's a physically dominating different kind of character than we've normally seen our Batman to truly be, first of all. And we actively see the differences between him and our normal kind of Batman. Because when he finally does show up to crash the party, it isn't subtle. This version of the Batsuit looks more like a riot gear duct taped together kind of in... I'm not even going to say garbage, because this suit does look clean. His cowl is modular, his ears double as knives, his cape is made out of some very nice armor and plates that really works together like wings or shields. It's messy, it's homemade, but it works. And this Batman obviously doesn't kill. He says that outright, but he doesn't hold back either. This is a far more brutal version of Batman than I probably have seen in a while, if we're going off besides the fact of like Flashpoint, where we see Thomas Wayne as Batman. This Batman is brutal, strategic, and ends with somebody in the hospital. And I know you might be saying, like, isn't that just our normal Batman? The big difference is this Batman suit, his emblem, the bat on his chest, the bat on his chest that does not look like a bat, comes off, and he's able to attach that into an axe head, where he will actively just start ripping and just slicing limbs off in whatever fashion that he feels like. And I know our normal Batman that we kind of gotten used to in any kind of media isn't a slouch. He will absolutely wreak havoc and basically send somebody to the infirmary and just break bones all willy-nilly. But we don't just see him slicing limbs off and just basically really just dismantling a body and making somebody completely disabled in that exact kind of format almost ever, or ever in general. And this just shows you the kind of mood and the kind of setting and the kind of version of Batman that we're about to get. A very different, a more actively, I'm not even going to say, don't even know if I want to say savage, but a more relentless and a more rough kind of Batman that I've ever truly been able to see. And the second and the moment that this issue truly gets into this entire full-on swing, especially with just the first issue, is when he takes on an entire warehouse of party animals using nothing but his home engineered tech and rage. And it is one of the most visually visceral sequences that I've truly seen, just due to the fact, as I said, he is a lot more willy-nilly with the way that he's trying to take these villains down than any kind of Batman that I've ever seen. And it doesn't really even help once we see the rest of his gear and the rest of the stuff that he actively has on available to him. Whether we're talking about his Batmobile, because yes, he still does have a Batmobile. And this isn't that slim, sleek kind of Batmobile that you're used to. It is quite literally a dump truck that is extremely massive, first of all, that is able to switch gears and switch settings into a faster kind of like just entirety of vehicle that one looks amazing, but just terrifying in general because the size of this monstrosity is honestly astonishing. And along with the fact that besides having the Batmobile, his entire just range of hideouts in his entire sequence and his entire like full on range of hideouts that he has in the entirety of Gotham, quite literally one makes out the entire symbol and makes out the entire just outline of his own bat emblem, along with the fact, as I've already said, he's a lot more ruthless and relentless. So when party animals find one of his hideouts, what does he do? He just burns the entire building down, leaving just a pale, like entire just kind of eyes from the building, and makes it a very one nice looking comic panel in general, but just shows you the type of timing that he's on again. And the reason that I'm honestly saying all of this is because one of them, not even one of, the first character that we see in the entirety of the Absolute Batman storyline is Alfred. And he's, one, different from the Alfred that we know, obviously, but he, at some point later on, does do some research and he figures out this all by himself. And I'm mainly just mentioning it due to the fact that this is what Alfred figures out off his own end, because, one, as I've already said, he's different. We automatically assume that just due to the fact that Waynes don't have money, so they didn't have Alfred working as their butler. So Bruce never had Alfred kind of growing up, which alone it makes for a very big difference. But the Alfred in this time, in this timeline, in this kind of story, is basically just an assassin, because the things really just do go a lot different in terms of this, because he is an assassin. No joke. He's got a motorcycle, tactical loadout, Black Ops backstory that basically rivals Deathstroke. You know what? You know the kind of character, and he is basically put into Gotham just to kind of figure out, oh, all of the stuff that's going on with the party animals. He was on a mission previous to this, and they took him off trying to catch somebody else to come to Gotham, figure out everything about the party animals. And then he's told that there is a third party. If you come in contact with him, you're allowed to, engage and do whatever, all that, yada yada. And that third party obviously is Bruce Wayne's Batman, and hence why we get to Alfred eventually stalking Bruce and them kind of gaining that somewhat alliance or whatever, that kind of team up that we're usually used to seeing, because those two are a perfect pair. No one can ever say wrong about that. But we see the kind of person that Alfred is, and we see the fact of him, one, monitoring Bruce's life, giving us information on everything that we might not automatically know about Bruce. And the confrontation between them is honestly truly insane, because we see that at some point after, Alfred's done all of the surveillance on Bruce, figuring out everything about Bruce, he does eventually try to neutralize him, which follows with a kind of cat and mouse sequence of him trying to follow him and eventually coming into one of Bruce's hideouts, where Bruce, one, has already stolen one of Alfred's, one of 3 in the world, shotguns that he eventually turns into a non-lethal version, and then proceeds to steal Alfred's motorcycle. But come on, he do look cool on that motorcycle, so we can't complain about that. And we eventually see all of the entire thing of them ending up having to team up together because of a situation where they're just getting a little overrun. And we see them working together in that monstrosity of a Batmobile that I was already talking about earlier, which leads with Bruce ejecting him out of the Batmobile later on. But besides that, we just do truly see the very big differences on how the story is truly lining up, and the big ways that so many differences have kind of just led into the situation. And now, before I actively start going off, we do have to talk about the other villains that I haven't exactly mentioned, because I said a good portion of his, like Bruce's rogues gallery, were now his friends, but there are three specific ones that I do have to mention that obviously aren't his friends and still are active villains in this entire timeline, which would just be Freeze, Bane, and the Joker. And now, obviously, we're going to start off with the Joker just due to the fact of, since I was just talking about Alfred, the Joker makes the most sense to kind of include right after him. And that's just because of the fact of the target that Alfred was going after right before having to come and deal with the entirety of the Gotham situation was this universe's version of the Joker. Which, calling him the Joker is not really realistic to his character in this timeline, just due to the fact of, one, he does not joke. He does not smile. He is never one of the kind of people that is allowed to, even crack a joke. Cracking a joke in front of him, basically really just ensures your death. Because, one, obviously we don't know exactly who he is. He is rich, controlled, trained, and his crimes are methodical and surgical. He doesn't joke. He doesn't laugh. And with all that silence, a clinical detachment. It makes him, honestly, probably one of the more disturbing versions of the Joker that I've ever seen put onto a page, just because of the fact that we've always known the kind of character that he is. We always have gotten used to this joking atmosphere, this kind of chaotic prince of the city, and the crown, like the crown prince, the Joker prince, all of the kind of monikers that we know him as. And without the laugh, without the smiles that we see, it makes him truly a lot more sinister, because it's basically like saying what happens when we have a Batman who laughs, and we already know the situation to that. What happens when we have a Joker that doesn't. It's basically that entire situation of, we all know Spider-Man. We all know that kind of big, giant debate of, what would you rather have? Like, who would you rather fight? A Batman who's, joking around and smiling, or a Spider-Man that is dead serious? And the answer to that is, I will take the Batman who's joking around any day of the week, because Spider-Man, we know Batman's usually not one to kill. Spider-Man, who knows? We've seen Spider-Man 1 go a lot more insane in a lot more different ways that I am terrified to actually see, because we know Spider-Man, he's a Joker character, and let's just say I don't want to deal with that. But that's kind of the same exact feeling that this Joker basically gives me. That kind of feeling of, yeah, no, I don't want to be there wherever he is. And that alone is just terrifying enough for me to just be like, yeah, this kind of version of Joker is a lot more crazy and a lot more dangerous and a lot more kind of person that I don't want to ever have to contend with or deal with in any general capacity. That's it. Move on. And kind of going on to, like, Mr. Freeze and Bane. Mr. Freeze in this universe is, let's just say, a lot different from what we normally know. Normally we know him to have that entire just mechanic suit around him, his clear little helmet that's coming around him that's just covering his head just so he can easily be able to breathe and all of that. We know the classic Mr. Freeze. This one looks a lot more terrifying, looks a whole lot more different, just due to the fact of, one, his skin is blue, his veins are, actively red, popping around, completely visible, arms longer, looks a lot more like an actual monster under the bed kind of person, and his eyes are bloodshot red. We see the entire actual kind of reasoning for this, because we see him actively put Bruce in this kind of thing that really kind of cryo freezes you, but doesn't really do it. It quite literally is just going to keep you in this kind of weird state for years upon years, never letting you be dead or alive. And it will, bloodshot your eyes, kind of freeze you to the point of all of this kind of things. And if you see what Mr. Freeze looks like, one, his body looks completely like monstrosity, arms long, feet long, entire looks like a nightmare fuel kind of character. And that's, one, scary as hell as it is, but when we talk about somebody like Bane, we have to mention the fact that we know Bane's never been a small guy to begin with, especially with the venom that he be taking. He's never been somebody that's small. He's never been somebody that we imagine being on the same height as Batman. But when your Batman is one, born in 2004, so meaning he's basically the same age as I am, just the story set in like 2028 or whenever it's set around. We have to talk about the fact that this Batman is like, as I said, 6'6". He is a giant. And Bane makes him look like a midget. Bane is standing 10, 12, 14 feet, something like that. His entire arms basically are the entirety of just the size of this big giant Batman that we already know. And he looks almost a lot more, honestly, as scary as Mr. Freeze does if you're truly imagining it, because I don't know which one I would be more afraid of if I had to look to in the face. Mr. Freeze that looks that scary, or somebody that's basically double my height plus, with muscles that basically would span three of me standing side by side. I don't know which one I want to really be contending with. These are true villains of villains, one first of all, and we see how Batman has to fight against each and every one of these in very different situations. Yeah, as I said, I'm not trying to go extremely in detail on how he's dealing with these villains because I would really like you guys to read this yourselves. But this kind of absolute Batman entire story is an unflinching reimagining of the myth of Batman. It takes everything you know about Bruce Wayne, Gotham City, and the Batman mythos and distorts it into a rough, gritty, socially conscious lens, and is less of a superhero comic and more of a, post-apocalyptic, honestly, because the way that these characters look, scary as hell. But more of a kind of deeper glimpse into what would truly be happening if Bruce Wayne and the entirety of Gotham was truly built so much different. As I said, Bruce is young, so Robin's not really in this story, and we don't see a lot of these other specific things that we're used to, but we could really truly see a lot of these different things kind of happen as the story goes along and with different possibilities or whatever. And along with the fact of Absolute Superman, Wonder Woman, Flash, Martian Manhunter, and all these other stories have already come out, we see the way that this world affects all of these other heroes also. And so I could easily just spend some time talking about those if you guys do enjoy this video and you guys just did enjoy this video. But if you guys like your Batman with a little more bite and a lot more moral ambiguity, this is your story. Thanks a lot for watching. If you guys like this, kind of deep dive, hit that button, subscribe to the channel for more comic book breakdowns or whatever. Drop a comment into which redesign specifically, shocked you the most. Alfred, Joker, the entire just a Batman or whatever. And any other absolute Batman of the series that you got, absolute universe series that you guys would like me to kind of go into next. But if you guys did enjoy this, you already know what to do. I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.